Hi everyone, I'm Will Brown and welcome to the WP Quickies, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. And in this lunchtime quickies, I'm going to be looking at WordPress post to archive, so archiving within WordPress. So thanks for taking your time this sunny Sydney afternoon. Welcome to those overseas and to those watching on replay as well. Okay, before we start, just a few housekeeping things. Make sure you hit subscribe and all that good stuff on the social channels. We have a Facebook group as well. So you can go into Facebook and it's WordPress Sydney Meetup. So you can join the conversation in that, ask any follow-up questions and all that stuff. Visit wpaustralia.org to see where all the meetups are happening in Australia and also to join us on Slack. I'll leave that on screen just for a little bit. You can look at that later on if you are a developer designer who creates or maintains client websites. You might want to check that out. And just a little bit of a shout out for the in-person meetup. So we're trying to kick off the community again here in Sydney. So if you're around in Sydney, this is the end of the month. So the last Monday of the month at 6 p.m. at the Microsoft Reactor. That's just next to Win Your Station. And this month I'm going to be doing a WordPress speed hack. So that's on June the 27th for that. So you can have a look at the meetup page and see what that is all about. You'll probably notice I've queued up quite a few little topics for the next couple of months. So thanks for all your suggestions, but keep them coming in. I'm always looking for some really handy tips on which I can present in the WP Quickies. So scan that QR code, or you can read it later and have a look at the QR code. All the links are in the video descriptions and in the meetup page afterwards. You don't have to furiously jot down all the stuff. I'll give you to that later on. Okay, let me know who you are and where you're joining us from. So I've got Jonathan Cooper, British Columbia in Canada. Wow, normally in New South Wales. You went far and fly, Jonathan, over in Canada. Excellent. Hope you're enjoying your time over there. Hey, Jeff. Hello. I've been watching you today. Where else are you streaming this to? I am streaming this to the Facebook meetup group and stream it to LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. So that's the Sydney WordPress Meetup Group channel, and on my own WordPress. My lips are failing today. And on my own YouTube channel as well. So Facebook, LinkedIn, and 2 YouTube channels. Nice to have you on board, Jeff. Okay. Let's get into it. So let's go back to this one. What do you do with existing website content when you don't want to make anything public anymore, but you don't really want to delete it either? So what do you do in that circumstance? Now, not all content is going to be evergreen, meaning it might not apply to some people all of the time. So evergreen content is content that can apply for kind of just general content that when people are skimming through your website, different levels of the sales funnel, that kind of means something to them. Now, some content's not going to be evergreen. That's content like time-based content, for example, reviews, maybe like time-based reviews, defunct products, maybe services that have kind of gone and past. But that sort of stuff, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it's not relevant anymore. And that's the sort of stuff that we might want to consider about archiving. Now, or simply, maybe you're just performing a review, a content review on old content to see if it's still relevant. Now, you have old posts on your WordPress website that aren't getting any attraction. I've got posts on my site since 2013, I think, going back then. I'm sure a lot of them are not relevant anymore. In fact, they're probably so old that they aren't even relevant to the services that you provide anymore. But you just can't bring yourself to delete them because, you think you might be able to repurpose them at some point in the future. It's your content. You don't want to delete it and zap it forever. So the whole idea of archiving the content posts kind of pops into your head, but WordPress doesn't have any native archive feature. So what are you going to do? In fact, WordPress kind of muddles the archive term. It kind of uses the word archive for the chronological content of your blog. So, for example, your blog archive on your homepage or your blog page, it calls it an archive. A lot of people call it an index. But WordPress uses the word archive. So it kind of muddles that term about a little bit. So let's have a look at the WordPress post status. Now, WordPress posts, they have a status attribute that controls the public visibility of the post. Now, a WordPress post status can be set to any of the following 8 default options. The first one is publish, and that means it's viewable by everyone. That's the public. Future, that's used by scheduling posts at future dates, so it's not yet public. Draft mode, which is incomplete posts, viewable by anyone with the proper user role, but not the public. Then we've got pending. Pending is awaiting a user review by anyone, as long as you've got that capability, maybe editors and above. Again, this is not public. Then you've got private. That's viewable only to the post author or administrators. And again, that's not public, but you can view it when you're logged into the website for the public facing. Then we've got one called trash. So that's pending deletion. Again, that's not public. We've got auto draft, which is all your auto saves, and they are not public. And then we've got inherit. Inherit's kind of a special one. So that's our kind of child post. So we're talking about maybe attachments or revisions using the status from the parent post. So again, those are not public, but they're stored in the database. And so out of the 8 post options that we've got, only publish really allows the post to be publicly viewed. So in the block editor, you control your post status from your post status and visibility settings. That's on the right-hand column of your Gutenberg editor. Click on the visibility setting to change the status. You can change it from public, private, and password protected. And you can set it to pending review, but only when the post status is in draft itself, not when it's published. So once it's published, that's out there in the public. Okay, so you can unpublish publish posts at any time by going up to the top right-hand side, clicking on the switch to draft, and that will reverse it back out the public view and put it into a draft mode. Again, not viewable by the public. So where's that post status stored? It's stored in the database along with all the other post data. So it's not in the post meta, it's actually in the _post database table. For that, we can see here I've outlined a column there, and it's got the status of archive, and I'll show you how it gets to that in a little bit later. But that's where it's stored, in case you're wondering. So that kind of reels us all the way back into the main question. So what do we really mean by archiving a post? So we're thinking about archiving a post. What do we actually really mean by that? So the first one is we don't want to delete the content entirely. We want to keep it in the CRM, in the admin interface, but not show it to the public. So those are kind of our 2 metrics that we want to achieve. But what we don't want is to remove the content from, so what we do want to do is remove the public from the content, from the public facing site. So don't delete the content entirely. Keep the content in the admin, but we want to remove that from the public facing site. We don't want people in the public to see that content anymore. So one way you could do this, you could use the existing WordPress core status fields. So you could change the status of a published post back to draft mode. What you can put to pending or private as well. And that would keep the content within the WordPress dashboard and stop it from showing publicly. Now, and maybe people do that. After all, that's kind of the only WordPress core options that you have. Otherwise, to delete the post. But this option, it will work, but it's kind of a bit messy workaround. So because if you actually do use these post status for some sort of editorial context, as it's meant to be used, then you're kind of going to be mixing old content with kind of future new or stuff that's pending or looking for a review. So it kind of, if you're taking existing published posts and bring them back into that kind of editorial cycle as well. So it is an option, but it's probably not the best option for that. So when I was looking around for this, I found another solution, and this one here is to add another post status. So this plugin here, which is LH Archived Post Status, it does a pretty good job of adding a post archive status and hiding the content from most of the main query loops in the front end of your website. So when people are looking at your WordPress website, we're talking about your blog archive, your category archive, your tag archive, stuff like that. So it does a pretty good job of not showing it if you move the status into archive. So what it does is when you're in the block editor, it replaces the status or the visibility UI with a little drop-down box here with all the available post statuses in WordPress core and a new one called archived. And that's the picture there. So you can see you can choose archive from that. Now you can easily filter and find archive posts within the WordPress dashboard, within the post dashboard. Now you can see here what we've got here. We've got a new archived option, which only pops up if you've set one or more posts to that particular status as well. But you can search for those different statuses. I can see here within the actual main view, it's got the dash archives as well. So you can quickly scroll through and see which ones are marked as archive in the main view. Now, the only issue I had with this plugin is that it displays archive posts in the WordPress site search. So it's not quite hiding every post in every circumstance. Now, I issued a code fix to the developer, but he did come back with me and say, well, he likes that. Okay, there's several use cases where he thinks that is acceptable. And if we want to add that code, and he's added that into the wiki for the plugin, then you're feel free to do that in your functions.php. But I for me, if you're archiving a post, then it's kind of gone from the public. So you can add that little bit of code snippet in that, and it completely zaps it from the entire public-facing website. Otherwise, your archive post will come up within your search site search if you're just using this plugin without that code snippet from there. Okay, so another question that because I did another talk on this maybe a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago on a WordPress meetup, and I got this question: so what happens for the media files off the archived posts? Well, nothing actually. Media library content is associated with post by their post ID, and it's not archived at all. So when you're going through this process of archiving a post, then it's just going to archive that post. It's not going to archive any associated posts around that. So we're talking about attachments like images and stuff like that. So media files, they are posts in their own right. And in fact, when you're adding a picture, an image or something, you have the option to link to the post page or to the actual media itself. So by default, WordPress kind of creates a post for each of these media files. So you're really going to have to deal with those media files separately, if you don't want those particular ones that are associated with that post to show it in the public face. But as it happens, just with this plugin, it doesn't archive any media content. It's just the main post. So another question that comes along is what happens to your SEO when you're archiving posts? So when you're archiving WordPress posts, it's removing the post content entirely from the public-facing part of your website, except the site searches if you're using that plugin. It also means that Google is no longer going to be able to index that site, and it's going to classify as missing. And this is kind of one of the big red flags for just kind of going through and archiving old content. It means you're going to increase your 404s within your Google Search Console. And that could be a little bit of an indication. It could be a red flag to Google to maybe lower your rankings and stuff like that, because it does take that into account in the algorithm. So you may want to make sure before you're archiving posts, you might want to make sure that you don't link to any other site content or have links from other content on your website to that particular post before you go archiving it. Otherwise, they're going to generate the 404 for those. Now, if either is true, you're probably going to want to set up a 302 redirection on those archive posts. It would be really neat if that plugin did that automatically for you. I know that some SEO programs like Yoast and SEO Press, which is one that I use, I know that when you're deleting stuff, then you can set it up to automatically create a 302 redirection for those. But the archive post doesn't do that. So it's something you might want to consider just setting up some redirection, just so you've got a little bit of a handle on those 404 errors for those. Now, as I say, most people have these SEO plugins like Yoast, like SEO Press, what's the other ones? Rank Math as well. And they do have this option to set up a redirection for them. So please use that if you're going to be going through and archiving your posts. Otherwise, you can use the plugin that I've got at the bottom of the screen here. So it's simply called Redirection, and you can see that within the WordPress.org repository for that. It does a pretty good job of just redirecting all your posts that you want to. So that's it, a super quick one today. So just to review, unfortunately, there's no WordPress core post status called archive that's going to remove a post entirely from the public facing part of your website while keeping the content within your CRM admin dashboard. One handy plugin that I showed comes pretty close, but I feel that we could do a little bit better support for managing archive post content within the WordPress core. So what I'm going to do this week, end of this week, tomorrow, I'm going to have a look through the track system, which is the way that the WordPress developers track all the different updates and issues with WordPress. I'm going to have a look for archive and see if there's any old track tickets in there that deals with maybe setting a status of archive for that, and maybe just kind of re-kick that off. If there's not, I might add one in there. Just for them to consider maybe using an archive status within WordPress. I think it'd be pretty useful for everyone to use. Okay, guys, if you've got any questions, you can pop them in the chat right now. Otherwise, I'll put up some information about me. I'm happy to connect with you. I'm mostly on LinkedIn these days under Will Brown AU, sometimes on Instagram, and probably rarely on Twitter. I don't tend to use Twitter at the moment. Really focused on LinkedIn at the moment and building up my Instagram following. But I do have a new website, willbrown.com. Check that out. There's going to be lots of more courses and stuff that I'm going to be offering over the next over this year. So keep an eye on that. If there are any other questions, then join me next week. I'm going to be talking about pop-ups. So this is one of the ones that one of the questions, the topics that's come through quite a bit for those, because quite a lot of people have asked for this. So I'm just going to be reviewing all the different ways that you can create pop-ups within WordPress, so external plugins, external services as well. I use an external service which I'm actually quite enjoy at the moment, and for some of the page builders as well, because I know like Elementor, they've got that popped in for that. So thanks, Jeff. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Jonathan, as well, and all the others that have joined us for today. Really going to look forward to seeing you next week when we're talking about pop-ups. So thank you, guys. See you and catch you next week.